So ladies, today I'm going to share with you how to fight with your husband so you can win. Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaylyn and you're watching Lovedhappy, your favorite place on YouTube for uplifting and motivational content about motherhood and God. And marriage. Today we're talking about marriage. And today I'm talking with you about marriage because I obviously have the perfect marriage and I obviously have everything together and we never get in fights and we just connect perfectly. We always... Okay, I'm just gonna stop now. No, I don't have the perfect marriage. Obviously not. Obviously not. Honestly, I don't know why God has me making videos like this because I am the most imperfect person, and I'm not saying that just to sound humble. I'm so imperfect just like you. And you hear me spewing out all the good stuff at you guys, but I struggle with things like you do. But yes, God has taught me things, and that's what He has me to share with you today. So I just pray that something in this encourage you as we talk about how to fight with your husbands. And by fight, of course, I don't mean fight with your husband, but I mean communicate. I'm talking about resolving conflict. That's the kind of fighting that I'm talking about today. How to communicate in a healthy way with your spouse when you have a disagreement and when things are just heated between you guys. Not that kind of heated. I mean like heated. Okay, the first thing that I want to say is something that my husband and I were told when we were in premarital counseling, and that is to remember that your spouse is never the problem and that you're never actually against each other. We are on the same teams as our spouses, but so often when there's an issue that comes up, for some reason, we actually blame the other person and attack the other person, as opposed to kind of pulling back and separating out the parts of the scenario that's going on and trying to figure out specifically what is going on that needs attention. What is the point of conflict that you need to resolve? Because I promise you, sometimes it feels like it's your spouse and it seems that way on the surface, but it never actually is. If you step back and pull things apart a little bit, look in deeper, you will see that it's actually not your spouse that you are against. And when you realize that, even if your husband maybe doesn't understand that he's not against you, you can step up and not turn against him, even if he's turning against you. I know sometimes we like to be petty and not humble ourselves, but try and humble yourself. Just try and be humble. Step back and recognize that you guys are not against each other. And as soon as you do that, even if your husband doesn't do that, if you can do that, you guys are going to be moving way in a better direction if you can at least recognize that you're not against him. Because as long as you guys are attacking each other and kind of blaming each other, it's just going to be very hard to move forward. So next time you want to bite your husband's head off, remember that you shouldn't be fighting with your husband. You should be fighting for your husband because you guys are on the same team. You are one flesh now. You want to be fighting for each other and for your union. And I know that sounds easier said than done, and that's why I have some other tips to share with you as well. So this next thing, my husband and I did not know to do this early on in our marriage. It just was kind of a foreign concept, but now it's something that we naturally always do when there is a point of conflict, and that is to look for the root of the problem. The roots go very deep, you know? It's like a tree trunk, and there are some roots and then there are deeper roots and deeper roots. And what I'm talking about is the real reason why you're upset. Maybe you're upset because your husband hasn't been helping around the house, or there's one thing that set you off, like he was gonna unload the dishwasher because that was his chore or something, and he didn't do it, and you got so mad and you just started blaming him and accusing him of all these things. But the real thing that was going on is you feel overwhelmed, you feel tired, you feel this. It's things that are going on with you. But yet because you're overwhelmed and exhausted, you start attacking him and accusing him of all these things. And that is not productive. What we need to do is get better at expressing our feelings and recognizing what's going on in us and taking responsibility. Because even though you're overwhelmed, we have responsibility to manage our emotions and to communicate. And we can't blame him if we are exhausted. I'm not saying we don't need our husband's help. I mean, I pray that we all have husbands that are super helpful and can help lift the burden from us. But we need to communicate our feelings and not just attack our spouses for not helping out. That's just an example, but I feel like that's probably kind of relatable to a lot of you guys out there. So the thing is with marriage is that no matter what your husband is doing or the situation that's going on in relation to them that's upsetting you, is we always have responsibility for ourselves in that scenario. There's always a way for us to stand up and be okay with God. Regardless of what our spouse is doing, God really can be our pillar counselor and our strength and everything that we need in that circumstance. The thing is, what happens in marriage or in other relationships is that we get triggered by our spouse's behavior based on wounds and insecurities and shaky places in ourselves, and it sets those places off in ourselves. And those are the things that we need to bring to God so He can help us work through those. The thing is with marriage and in relationships is that lots of times we're not stewarding our soul very well, so that way it's really easy to get set off by other circumstances going on around us and by our spouse. Things are just festering and you don't realize how tired you are, and you don't realize all these other wounds that are going on in your soul, and then it bubbles over, and then we kind of have to go back and clean up the mess and realize, oh wow, I was really overwhelmed, or oh wow, I was really being affected by this, or gosh, I thought I had dealt with that old pain from the past a while ago, but I still have some forgiveness to do, so I think I need to go pray about that. My point is that just kind of how life goes. I feel like we can't always be proactive and have the perfect manicured, loved, tended soul, you know what I mean? Life kind of gets crazy and it gets stressful and these little fights come up. But my challenge to you is to look into yourself and see what God is trying to teach you, as opposed to fixating on your spouse and fixating on the particular circumstance that's going on, because it's really not about the surface circumstance. I promise you, it's always about something deeper. So I just challenge you to ask God for wisdom about what is really going on in your heart, and I promise you He'll give you wisdom and He'll help show you why things are so painful or so frustrating for you and what is really going on. Maybe there's something that happened long ago in your childhood where your father used to do one thing, and then when your husband does something, it reminds you of what your father used to do, and you associate your father with all these other wounds and pain that you have, so then you project that onto your husband. You know what I'm saying? It just kind of goes deep. All this stuff goes deep. So recognize that, get to the root, and then pray through that. Whether it's together or separate, you need to give that to God and let Him breathe life into that and kind of rework that in your heart. And let Him give you truth. Let Him give you the right perspective, His perspective on the situation. And that's how we're actually transformed and refined through marriage. And that's what's so beautiful. That's what I love about my marriage, is that because of what I'm describing to you, this is how I have grown so much in marriage, and why all the trials my husband and I have faced have really been a blessing, because I have learned so much and grown so much. Every part of me that was shaky, just my deepest insecurities, have really healed so much through marriage, not through my spouse and not through him loving me perfectly at all, but actually through all the struggles we face and how I realized I need God in all these areas. That is how marriage has helped me. It's not what my husband has done. It's the trials that we face together and what God has done by me submitting to Him and Him just shifting things around in my mind and my heart, which is really beautiful and just the best part of marriage in my opinion. So just another reminder for you, when you are fighting with your spouse, try and just separate yourself from it, the emotional heat of everything, as much as you can. And this sounds kind of crazy, but try not to take things personally. And like I said previously, recognize that there's just so much other stuff going on inside of him, inside of you, that's so much deeper. And the more you can separate yourself from it, out of the emotions, the easier it's going to be able to see what's actually going on, so then you can move forward to resolve it. But what it makes me think of in the Bible, when God instructs us to clothe ourselves with Christ and to take off the old self and put on the new self, put on the mind of Christ, and especially in these moments when we're just in our flesh, it's so crucial to be able to do this, and I've definitely got better at this. The more times we fought, the more years we have under our belt. We're coming up on 5 years of marriage next month, which is awesome. Just kind of step back, know that all these emotions are going to blow over, even though if they feel so intense, and maybe just the things your husband's spitting out at you just are triggering you and you just feel mad or hurt or angry or misunderstood. Just try and step back, because if you just dive into that tornado of emotions and get lost in it with him, it's just going to be a big mess. I know it's so tempting because you want to just get in there and fight, but you're not going to be able to move forward, and you could spend hours there just like getting at each other, but it's not actually making progress. So step out of the tornado, put on the mind of Christ, even if it feels unnatural. It doesn't feel natural to me. A lot of times I do this, but it almost feels like I'm acting, which is fine. I mean, what's wrong with acting patient? What's wrong with acting like you have self-control? Because it's not my natural thing, but that's how we get good at something, and I want to be more patient. I want to have more self-control, and the more that I do it, the easier that it gets. The more I submit to the mind of Christ and not to my flesh ways of wanting to just react and get in there with him. It really is easier because you see how much more quickly things get resolved when you do that, when you can speak peacefully and tell him, hey, I understand, and not feel like you need to just shout to get your point across and be heard. No, just step back, listen, because in these scenarios, we both need to be listened to. So take the initiative and listen, let him talk, and again, really try and understand the root of the situation. Try and understand his heart. Try and listen between the lines and see what the cry of his heart really is, and just lovingly bring that up to him. That's what I do. When I recognize, I think this other deeper issue is coming up, this wound that he had with his father or his mother or something that happened, I don't tell him, hey, this is what's going on, but I might say, do you think maybe you're feeling this way because of this? In a gentle, suggestive way, and almost every time that works out really well. If I'm in that calm place and not attacking him, like, you're only doing this because your dad did this or something like that. So just be calm, be loving. Even if it feels like acting, act like Christ. That is a good person to act like. Really focus on trying to hold your tongue, and things are just so much more effective that way. And again, remember that you're on the same team. Recognize that if your spouse is upset, there's probably some issue in him as well going on where he just needs love. Really, just try and love him in whatever way that you feel like you want to be seen so badly, like your spouse is just not seeing you. He's not getting your point. He's not understanding. Be gracious with him and try and not accuse him. When you start accusing, people get defensive, then you're back fighting against each other, and you don't want to do that. So just try and be loving, come alongside him, know that he really does love you, and talk to him that way. Talk to him from the perspective that he loves you. Even if he's stressed too, he does care that you're overwhelmed, even if he feels that way too. And just have that belief in him loving you and him really caring about your needs. And from that point of view, continue on the conversation about what is going on with you and what your needs are. And in that journey, we all have different spouses and different situations, and sometimes our husbands aren't going to get it. Sometimes we're not going to come to an easy resolution. But that's the blessing of having God with us, is that we can lean into him when we need him and when our spouses fail. We really should lean into him all the time. But our husbands aren't always going to meet our needs. They're not always going to be unloading the dishwasher when we want them to. In those times, even if they're hard, we should see them as blessings because they help us recognize our dependency on Christ and lean into that even more, even if it's hard. So I just want to remind us that God, even in the practical things, he is enough, and he can help us walk through those things, and he wants to help us all with the shortcomings of our husbands and be enough for us in those scenarios. I would just say make sure you include God. Don't just get in your flesh. Really try and get in the spirit. Pray for wisdom. Wisdom is so important and something we should seek after, and so helpful when you're disagreeing. So pray for wisdom, pray for patience, and pray that God would help you love your spouse. Anyways, these are just a few of the things that come to mind when I think about fighting with our spouses well and really loving them well, because that's really what marriage is about, is love, and it's about submitting to one another. I would absolutely love to know what you have to add to the conversation down below in the comments. Let me know some of the best marriage advice you've got, in particular advice pertaining to when you're kind of in an argument. Share it with all of us down below in the comments so we can encourage each other. And if you didn't hear my recent announcement, I have recently started a Facebook group for all of us called the Lovedhappy Sisterhood, where we can talk more about topics exactly like this one and just share our stories, maybe share examples, just get to know each other, chat, encourage each other, maybe talk about specific challenges we faced, and we can just help each other, and we can listen to each other, help each other work through it, give each other advice, pray for each other, things like that. So if you're interested in joining that group, it's a women's group, it's private. I will have the link in the description box so you can go check it out, and I cannot wait to see you over there. Make sure you say hi in the little introductory post and let us know a little bit about you so we can all get to know each other better. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, because that helps me to know to make more of these videos in the future. I love you so much. I hope you have a beautiful day, because you're absolutely worth it, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!